Hi guys, this is Amanda Bach and I am going to walk through my Think Aloud discussion assignment. I am going to be teaching 4th or 5th grade for this lesson, and we are going to be talking about decimal models, decimals, and fractions. And we are going to use online resources to kind of gauge what resources are appropriate and acceptable to use in terms of learning how to solve this worksheet. So here I'll go. Okay, class, math can be tricky. From personal experience, I tend to understand concepts better in class when I have somebody explaining them to me than when I get home and then I ask my parents and they either don't have time or they are confused or maybe they learned a different way that I'm not familiar with, and that's totally okay. Sometimes when I feel overwhelmed and cannot remember what I learned, I will use the online resources to help me. For our math lesson today, we will be refreshing our memory on how you can express a part of a whole number. Math can be very tricky, especially when being asked to write a number multiple ways. There are so many different concepts and ways to express numbers. For example, 4/100ths is the same as 0.04, or also called 4/100ths. Also, 3/4 is the same as 0.75, which is also 3/4. You can also write a fraction or a decimal from using a decimal model. To better understand the properties of decimals and fractions, we will answer the following question and put together a list of steps. Lastly, you will work independently or with a partner to create a worksheet showing these steps that you can use as a reference in the future. So the specific question that we will be working on today is, how can I express a fraction or decimal from a decimal model? First, I am going to reread the question. How can I express a fraction or decimal from decimal model? It's important to reread the question posed on whatever topic it is that we are researching to make sure that I know what information I need to look up. The question is asking me to express the number by using a decimal model, writing it as a fraction and as a decimal. Therefore, I need to figure out how to do that. Keywords that jump out to me immediately are express, fraction, and decimal. Therefore, I need to use these words in my search to determine how best to explain to do this. So to figure out what I have to do using online resources is I'm going to go to a Google search. I am going to type in some keywords. So looking back at my question, how can I express part of a number as a fraction? I'm going to type in here, or using a decimal model, and fraction. And let's see what I come up with. Okay. There's some images, some videos, doesn't really offer me any explanations. Oh, here's a screenshot from IXL. I'm familiar with that program, so I know that if I'm looking for something similar to this, I'm on the right track. How do you model decimals using fractions? Here's a video. But that looks like it's specific to that one problem. Oh, here's a YouTube video. Let's take a look at this. Writing tenths and hundredths in decimal and fraction form. Okay, I've heard of Mr. J. I've seen him in my math classes before. And just looking at this video, it already looks like some of the math models, decimal models that I have seen and used in class. Number 1 is a tens model. Number 2 is a 100ths model. And I know what it means when they're all filled in because that's part of the whole that I am working with. Okay, so let's take a look to see how legitimate this resource is. It's got almost 140, it's just got over 144,000 views. It's got over 1,300 likes. Math with Mr. J has over 504,000 subscribers. That's a whole lot of people that rely on these videos, but hold on. Show more. Whether you're just starting out or need a quick refresher, this video is for you if you're looking for help with decimal models, modeling tenths and 100ths. Okay, so this gives me an explanation of what Mr. J is going to be teaching. And he also offers 2 more video extensions focusing specifically on tenths and hundredths if I want to use them. So when we're considering what are good resources, this is a perfect example of what to look for. We want to make sure that it's a legitimate source. by seeing how many people view the source, especially if you're going to be looking at a how-to video. You want to make sure that it offers explanation and further extension. And you also want to make sure that the material that's covered inside of the video is relevant and it's consistent with what you're learning in class. Just from watching the first 5 seconds, it does appear that way. But as any good researcher does do, we are going to go back and take a look to see if there's another video that has similar material to make sure that what Mr. J is trying to teach us is correct. Here's one, fraction, decimal, and percent from Visual Model. I'm not really learning percentage, but if you look here on the Google search, you can see fraction, decimal, model, decimals, and fractions highlighted. And it is from Khan Academy. Like, Academy is kind of like a school, so let's see what this is all about. Plus, it's one of the top searches that came back. Okay, so this video jumps right in. It's showing us a tens bar, and it also is explaining to me that all 10 of those lines is a unit of one whole. And so that what's colored in is a part of one whole. So that's kind of like what I'm trying to answer is how can I express part of a number as a fraction? Let's see. It goes on a little bit further, fraction, decimal, percent. Don't really need to know percent for this assignment, but it is relevant. So I suppose this is okay. I'm going to go take a look to see how many views this video's got. Oh, wow. 156,000 views, 668 likes, but it's got almost 7.5 million subscribers for this. This is significantly more than Mr. J. But when I go to select on show more, it doesn't really give me any additional extensions. It does have a bunch of people who replied on here saying that it was helpful to answer school questions, gave a person better concepts in fractions, decimal, percentages, and how they can be equal. Okay, well, that makes sense because the graph that we have to fill out is kind of asking me to do that minus the percentages. It's asking me to take this number and write it as a fraction, as a decimal, and in decimal model. So except for when I get down here, then I probably have to do it in reverse if I'm thinking correctly. So I have shown you through just doing a simple Google search or looking on youtube.com/edu how you can come across how-to videos for if you are stuck on a math or word problem. So in rereading my question, I'm going to ask you to practice looking for an educational video about writing numbers from decimal models to decimals and fractions while I walk around. I want you to ask yourself the questions that I modeled for you, such as, is this site legitimate? Was it helpful and pertinent? And does it provide any extra information if I'm still not clear on a subject? If you can answer yes to those questions, then that means you're more than likely going to have a legitimate resource. Okay, so once the students start breaking off from my modeling how to look for legitimate resources and how they can gather information, I'm going to, as a teacher, walk around and make sure that they are staying on task and that they are looking at appropriate resources and seeing what they come up with to see if they mimic the examples that I provided for them. In the end, and I'm going to ask them to talk to each other, work as partners or independently, and create a list of actually how to solve these math problems. In the end, I'm going to pull them all together. I'm going to pull up a Canva or a PowerPoint, and I'm going to insert what they come up with. So the students might respond, all right, step one, you determine what place value you're working with, whether it's tenths, hundredths, or thousandths, and then that will be your denominator. It's also going to be important when we're doing this worksheet and then when we go to complete like our kid-friendly steps of how to solve these problems, to keep in mind the discipline-specific vocabulary such as denominator, numerator, dividend, divisor, quotient, just so that way the kids are still using those terms, but they're able to think of it in their own minds and process how to do it that makes sense to them. Then lastly, what I will do is I will go back to the analysis and I will compare the information that the students were able to come up with that we've put on this worksheet. And then we would work together, or they can work independently as a class to make sure that the steps that they came up with make sense on how to complete this worksheet. Thank you for watching.